In the card, there was a heart sign on the teddy face, which meant that both players had to kiss each other on the lips. Daisy got up to change the topic, mentioning that she should clean up. However, as she was drunk, she fell upon the Duke. Daisy apologized and said she would clean up the mess, but the Duke told her he thought she fell over because she was trying to run away without fulfilling the penalty. In that moment, Daisy, angry and influenced by alcohol, grabbed the Duke's face. The Duke was powerful and commanding enough to even dictate with his eyes. He feared nothing, but the situation was strange. Whenever he saw Daisy, she acted weird and out of character. Ever since breakfast that morning, when Hattie asked the Duke and Daisy what time they went to bed, Daisy had been acting strangely. Without touching her food, she ran outside. After that, Daisy ran away every time she saw the Duke. Daisy was running away from the Duke. But the actual situation was that yesterday he received a letter from the doctor. The letter said that if the patient wanted a special scented oil, he could prepare it, but the doctor needed a reply that day. Therefore, the Duke was reaching out to Daisy every time, but she kept running away. Later, when he saw Daisy and Pietra sitting on a chair, she made weird faces upon seeing him. The Duke told her he had been looking for her all day and needed to talk to her about something, but she ran away again. The Duke thought she was being weird and playing hide and seek with him, so he got into character and started looking for her all over the palace. Finally, he caught her. He entered her room and closed the door. The Duke asked her if she was busy, and she replied that she was on her way to see Hattie. But the Duke informed her that he had sent Hattie outside for some work. Even then, Daisy tried to avoid the conversation and asked if they could talk later, but the Duke clearly refused. Daisy told the Duke that it wouldn't ever happen again. The Duke responded, asking how she could be so sure. Daisy was talking about last night, while the Duke was talking about the time she was attacked by bees. They were thinking about completely different things. Daisy ran away, saying she was sorry she killed him like that. Last night, the Duke and Daisy kissed, and she fulfilled her penalty, which was why she was acting so strangely today. Daisy was talking about last night when she lost the game and had to pay the penalty to the Duke. But the Duke was talking about the bees. Later, the Duke, Daisy, Pietra, and Hattie were sitting in a chariot and going somewhere. Daisy and the Duke were sitting across from each other. Pietra was happy that this was their first outing together, and Daisy was also relieved that she had Pietra with her to avoid the awkward situation between her and the Duke. They reached their destination, and two women welcomed them into their store. The women informed them that they had everything they might need, including decorations, dolls, various games, and party tableware. Suddenly, Pietra informed the Duke and Daisy that she would go with Hattie. Daisy was shocked to hear this, as Pietra always used to go with Daisy, but today she ditched her, out of all days when Daisy needed her most. Hattie was confused by Pietra's sudden change in nature, as she never used to pay attention to him. Pietra told Daisy to go and shop with Dad. After some time, the Duke asked Daisy to join them because he had something he wanted to give her. He looked at the storekeeper and asked him to make sure it was fixed properly. When the shopkeeper opened the box, it was her necklace. Daisy wondered what her necklace was doing there. The Duke informed her that the jeweler at the store was quite famous and that it had been in good hands, so it should be perfect. Daisy had thought he would have thrown it away, but the Duke informed her that since he was the one who broke it in the first place, he was responsible for repairing it. Daisy was thinking of apologizing to the Duke as she had been acting awkwardly and ignoring him for some time. As she was about to turn around and say something, there was a man standing there. He was huge and had a beard. The man, who came from outside, noticed the crest on the carriage was of the Duke and came inside to meet him. The storewoman tried to tell the man that they were closed for private shopping, but the Duke interrupted and said it was fine. The Duke met him, shook his hand, and asked if he was back in Pontypool. The man replied, yes, for now. As these two were having a conversation, Daisy started thinking about the time when her friend, who created one of the suitors, used the name of a place she had always dreamt of going. She was always too busy working to take the time to go there. The character she created was the greatest bandit of all time, the ultimate bad boy, a heinous guild leader who dominated the black alleys. Daisy decided to warn the Duke about this. She held his hand and took him away to a small room below the stairs. The Duke was confused about what she was planning to do, but later she informed him that the man he was talking with, his grandson, is going to be one of the suitors. Daisy informed him that the man had been single his whole life. Everybody knew that he earned the title of Count with his excellent swordsmanship and that he was known for his meritorious service on the battlefield. The man never got married because he spent most of his life in battle, and they were assuming that he perhaps had a secret family or something. The Duke thought that the man was a principled, trustworthy man until the end, and there was no way he would be keeping his family, his own flesh and blood, hidden like that. Daisy wondered if she might have gotten the wrong name. The Duke informed her that he would still look into it, so at least there wouldn't be any surprises later on. While they were chatting, the door opened, and people were standing outside the door watching them. Hattie and the store woman saw them both inside. Daisy tried to explain that they might be misunderstanding the situation. In the palace later, Daisy was cleaning up the stuff that Pirta had spread. She noticed that the cards they were playing with yesterday were lying there, but suddenly she noticed something strange about the cards. Daisy noticed something off about the cards. She realized that yesterday there was a heart sign on the teddy, but today there was no heart. She remembered when her friends discussed making the female protagonist a puppet master. They thought it would be fun if the lead character were a puppet master who was excellent at scheming, and they decided she should be a duke's daughter. Daisy remembered that each friend added their own suitor, but when it came to the main female lead, they created the character together and unanimously agreed on that part. The next day at the breakfast table, Pirta prepared some juice and asked Daisy to drink it and let her know if it was tasty. Initially, Daisy thought that even if the juice was not tasty, she would have to pretend that it was great. However, it was actually very good. The Duke mentioned that Lady Rhodazin would like it too. They praised Pirta's juice-making skills, but when the Duke offered her another glass, she said that she would only drink 1 glass of juice per day, and asked the Duke and Daisy to finish it, saying she was going to clean her room. The Duke was a little sad that his daughter was maturing so fast, but Daisy thought it was unusual for Pirta to refuse another glass voluntarily, as she usually used all kinds of flattery to get the Duke to pour her another one. Daisy couldn't believe that Pirta was using her power of manipulation on the Duke and her. Daisy understood that Pirta wanted the Duke and her to become close, and if by any chance this was true, she would become involved with the Duke and become Pirta's stepmother. Daisy grasped Pirta's intention. As Pirta left the room, Hattie carried her and brought her back inside. He informed the Duke that the accountant was here and had an urgent report regarding last year's tax. The Duke decided to attend to this matter, and Pirta's plan to keep the Duke and Daisy together failed. After some time, the Duke and Daisy were hiding inside a cupboard because Hattie interrupted Pirta, which made her sad. She decided to play hide and seek and became the seeker. She herself advised the Duke and Daisy to hide inside the cupboard. The Duke informed Daisy that he had done some research, but there was nobody named Santorini in that guild, and the guild name was encrypted, making it hard to read. Daisy wondered what they should do. The Duke then revealed that he had found the location of a secret meeting. Daisy couldn't believe how much the Duke had managed to discover in such a short time. Daisy asked the Duke about the meeting date, thinking she should come along since she knew other names besides Santorini. If she could be there too, she might be able to gain more information. The Duke came close to Daisy and informed her that he always strives for perfection. Daisy decided she must be extra cautious because it would be dangerous. Suddenly, Hattie decided to join the hide and seek game and wanted to play with them. Pirta tried to stop him, but he was not ready to listen, so Pirta kicked Hattie. Pirta was crying as her dad scolded her for kicking Hattie. Her father also advised her to go and apologize to Hattie right away. Daisy thought that Pirta was definitely wrong in what she did, but watching her cry was breaking her heart. Daisy wanted to hug her, but all she could do was watch because the Duke said they must not spoil Pirta. After a while, Daisy went to her room. She was really exhausted, even though she had been inside all day. When she went towards her window, she noticed that Pirta and Hattie were sitting on the stairs outside. Daisy thought it looked like they had talked everything out, and Pirta was even letting Hattie touch her hair. Daisy wondered how they had gotten so close all of a sudden. What had actually happened a few hours earlier was that Pirta went to Hattie to apologize for kicking him. Hattie was not angry at all and said it was fine, and she didn't have to cry. Hattie asked Pirta why she had been acting strange lately and why she was trying to get the Duke and Daisy alone all the time. He also asked her if she didn't like being with Daisy anymore. Pirta informed him that she liked Daisy a lot and that she was her favorite. Hattie mentioned that he liked Daisy a lot too. Pirta was in deep shock as she had made up her mind that Daisy was going to marry her dad. Hattie smiled and said he was just kidding and that he was on Pirta's side. He also mentioned that Daisy was kind, strong, and cool, and he thought she was a good match for the Duke. Pirta mentioned that it was hard for her and that was why she was trying to stop him, because her dad and Daisy needed to be together. Pirta said that Daisy kept running away. Hattie informed her that she must be using the wrong approach, which was why it was so hard. Pirta asked him what she should do now. Hattie informed her that in order for love to grow between a man and a woman, they both must be interested in each other. To further clarify, he mentioned that the Duke must be interested in Daisy, and Daisy must be interested in the Duke. Pirta mentioned that her father liked Daisy, she liked Daisy, and everybody liked Daisy. So now the real question was, does Daisy like the Duke? Hattie mentioned that since Daisy kept running away, he thought she might not be interested. Pirda started crying and wanted Daisy to like her dad. She asked Hattie to help her in the situation since he was much closer to her father. Hattie gave it a thought and figured that getting involved in other people's love affairs was always entertaining, so they made up a plan. Hattie and Pirda made up a plan and called it their little secret. Hattie told Pirda that it was such a sensitive issue that they should keep it between themselves. Pirda and Hattie were both really excited about forming an alliance. He explained to Pirda that they would be partners and work on a big project together. Pirda asked Hattie to begin their pledging ceremony. Hattie asked what this pledging ceremony was and where she learned about it. She informed him that she read about it in a book and that such ceremonies were for times like this. Pirda then allowed Hattie to touch her hair 3 times. They both completed the ceremony. The next day, Daisy was sneaking into Pirda's room slowly with a present in her hand, but Pirda was awake and jumped on Daisy. Pirda was really happy today because her friend was coming to meet her. The Duke also didn't sleep well because today was his beloved daughter's birthday, and he couldn't ruin it. It was especially significant because it was the first time she would be making a friend. Pirda saw the present and asked Daisy what it was and if she could open it. When Pirda opened the box, it was a pumpkin cake. Pirda was really happy, and everyone in the mansion wished her a happy birthday. Pirda was very cheerful and chatty, and it made everyone happy to see her like that. However, there was a small unexpected hiccup, and the joyful mood was interrupted when Rhodazen's mom and dad appeared at the party, even though they were not invited. They both tried their best to admire Pirda, but Pirda was sad and started crying. Daisy picked up Pirda and took her inside. In her mind, she was thinking how these people could ruin Pirda's birthday like this since they specifically told them only Lady Rhodazen was invited. Normally, parents would understand the situation and just send along a nanny or set up a time to pick the child up later. Rhodazen's dad asked if they could come inside. The Duke asked if they had brought their invitation. When the Duke checked the invitation, he mentioned that only Lady Rhodazen's name was on it. He then mocked them by saying that inviting themselves to an event for which they hadn't received a proper invitation was impolite, and showed them the way to their carriage. They had no choice but to do as they were told. They tried to hold out as long as possible, but they couldn't go against the Duke's wishes. Once Rhodazen's parents left, they were finally able to greet her properly. Rhodazen and Pirda stood next to each other, and Pirda was being shy now. Rhodazen's nanny asked her to give Pirda the present. During their first meeting, Daisy had informed Rhodazen of Pirda's favorite color, and she hadn't forgotten that and brought a present in the same color. The birthday celebration began, and everyone was invited to come inside. The Duke mentioned that there was still a long way to go and asked everyone to get inside the palace. Daisy was thinking and imagining the 2 little ones as adults, exchanging cold, contemptuous glances in the original story. She also knew that the plot was changing, and she was not sure what would come. But now Daisy was more excited than afraid. The Duke and Daisy were peeking inside a room silently. Inside, Pirda and Rhodazen were alone because Pirda had informed them that the Duke and Daisy should not interrupt her, no matter what happens. She would be the one who served the juice before the party began. The Duke and Daisy were trying to listen to their gossip, but suddenly Pirda was coming toward the door. The Duke pulled Daisy, and they hid inside a cupboard. The Duke mentioned that they should stay in the cupboard for a while. Daisy said that it felt cozy in there. The Duke was thinking that since his daughter was super excited today, it would be hard to get her to go to bed tonight. He then remembered that Countess Lapel had given birth yesterday, and informed Daisy. He also mentioned that it was a healthy boy who looked just like his parents, red eyes and all. And now that the baby was born, Lapel was really hitting the books hard. Daisy said that it was wonderful, but she was worried when he invited the couple, thinking something might go wrong. The Duke looked at Daisy and asked if she thought he might do something wrong. The Duke smiled and said that he thought they both knew each other quite well, but he guessed not. He mentioned one more thing. The guild had their eyes on them and would have their secret meeting tomorrow. Daisy was shocked to hear this and was relieved that it was not on the same day as Pirda's birthday. The Duke mentioned that it was not something to get excited about, and with a smile, he brushed Daisy's hair with his fingers and said that he was more worried for her than she was. Daisy blushed, and while she was thinking about the feelings she was having, assuming that the Duke had feelings for her, Pirda opened the cupboard and hit Daisy on the head. Pirda asked Rhodazen to come with her to the mirror room now. Everyone standing outside welcomed the lady, and everyone entered the mirror room. For Daisy, it was the first time she would be seeing the mirror room decorated like this. As people entered the mirror room, everyone was amazed. There were pumpkins all around and a chandelier with baby pumpkins. It was truly a pumpkin lover's heaven. Daisy wondered if they had bought every single pumpkin-related product in the country. While she was checking around, her eyes were caught by something. Daisy was amazed by the mirror room, but suddenly something else caught her attention. The Duke was standing in front of something covered with a white cloth. It was huge. Pirda asked her dad what it was. The Duke responded that it was a gift for her. When she grabbed the cloth and removed it, there was a beautiful and huge fountain. Everyone was so shocked to see it. Pirda and Rhodazen started putting their heads inside the water of the fountain and drinking it. Daisy was worried about both of them and asked what they were doing. Pirda informed Daisy that it was not water, it was actually pumpkin juice. Hattie mentioned that they managed to complete the fountain in time. For a while, they thought they wouldn't be able to meet the deadline. Daisy was thinking that all the liquid flowing through the fountain was pumpkin juice, and she had seen a fountain like that in her past life. But it was only in the dessert section of a buffet, and had only 3 layers. The Duke originally wanted to build an artificial pond filled with juice in the garden, but he thought it might be a bit unsanitary, regardless of how well maintained it was. However, the fountain he ordered to be created was well constructed, so the beverages circulated through the pipes properly. He knew that the juice could be emptied out afterward, and it could be used as a regular fountain. The Duke asked Hattie if they should put it in Pirda's room. Hattie responded that it would be a good idea, sir. Daisy saw Pirda having fun with Rhodazen, both holding each other's hands. Later, everyone gathered to cut the cake. Pirda was really happy today. Her laughter and her expression were the happiest Daisy had ever seen during her entire time at the mansion. Later, it was time for Rhodazen to go back to her family. Pirda and Rhodazen were holding each other's hands, thinking about the time they enjoyed together. Pirda told Rhodazen that she was going to frame the drawing they did together and hang it up in her room for a long, long time. Rhodazen thanked her for the invitation and praised the delicious food the chef prepared for them and the fun game of hide and seek they played in the garden. Both children hugged each other and promised to meet soon. A few hours later, when Pirda was lying down on her bed, she was still worried about whether Rhodazen had reached her home safely. The next morning, after Pirda's birthday party, peace and quiet returned to the mansion. However, Daisy was becoming anxious because it was the day of the secret meeting connected to the mysterious male leader who would one day become the guild leader. Daisy was worried about the situation because the meeting was not tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow, but actually today. As the secret meeting drew closer, her anxiety and concern grew. Initially, she thought it wouldn't bother her, but she was wrong. The Duke entered the room wearing black clothing. He approached Daisy and informed her to cover her face properly. He also instructed her that no matter what happened today, she must not leave his side. For a moment, Daisy wondered if he was worried about her. From his appearance, he looked like an ordinary man going out for the night. Daisy smiled, and when the Duke asked what was so funny, she said it was nothing and reassured him that she would be extremely helpful this time, guaranteeing it. She mentioned that her friend was well known for her scientific mind and was a highly sought-after math instructor. Unsurprisingly, her friend wasn't very good at writing novels. When creating the guild leader suitor, she resorted to the tactic of selecting names based on things she liked, such as her favorite food, song, and place. So finding clues for Daisy wouldn't be hard as long as she knew what those were. When they reached the bar, the Duke told Daisy not to call him sir. She replied that she should have asked for a wig from Hattie. Daisy had expected the secret meeting to take place in an abandoned warehouse or a back alley. The Duke explained that there was a chance knights or patrolmen might be lurking around those places, and he was sure the people coming for the meeting were smart enough to avoid gathering in suspicious locations. He compared it to the story of the Eunice house, which turned out to be a hotspot for large-scale gambling. Daisy noticed that the customers here looked pretty ordinary, but the Duke stood out. Even if he was covering himself, he still had a noble stature. From behind Daisy, a waiter came and asked if they had ordered 2 beers, placing the beers on the table. As Daisy was about to turn around to complain about the service, she recognized the waiter as a guard from the mansion. She looked at the Duke and suddenly realized that everyone sitting inside the pub worked at Henstone Mansion. Daisy was amazed and recalled when the Duke told her that he always strived for perfection. She thought he had arranged all of this because she might be in danger. The seats were still empty in the bar. Daisy told the Duke that they couldn't all have gone to the bathroom, to which the Duke replied that it looked like they were getting started soon. He mentioned that if anyone left their seat, they should follow. The Duke was mumbling about the possibility of a secret passage. Suddenly, Daisy remembered that there were stairs leading to the basement. Daisy mentioned to the Duke that she remembered a passage and informed him that there are stairs here that lead to the basement. The Duke asked Daisy how she knew about this. She responded that she had been to this bar before and remembered seeing stairs that led to the basement. Daisy also mentioned that it was dark and gloomy, making it perfect for secret meetings. She also told the Duke that she came here with Polyp and that he fell down the stairs once because he was drunk, which is how she learned about the basement. The Duke seemed to forget who Polyp was, so Daisy reminded him about the dummy who sold that necklace. The Duke's face changed when he heard that Daisy came here with Polyp. Daisy tried to tell the Duke that she came here with the staff at the restaurant, but at that moment, they saw a guy going downstairs. They decided to follow him, and the Duke instructed Daisy not to leave his side. Daisy felt very different down here. It was very dark, and when they reached the basement, they heard some voices coming from a slightly open door. The Duke held Daisy's hand and took her near the door very carefully. Inside the room, some people were talking about not having received the deposit yet. It seemed like someone had refused to give them money because it was illegal. A man with a red shawl was sitting in front, with a hooded cap on his head and his foot on the table. The person with the red shawl was advising his men to make an example out of someone, so people might think twice about not paying if they knew their life was at stake. Daisy couldn't see the guild leader's face as it was hidden by the hood. The people inside ended the meeting, but Daisy was unable to gather any clues about the suitor yet. Suddenly, she heard someone mention that the girl's name until the next meeting is Mal. Daisy quickly figured out that it would be Maldive. She informed the Duke that she hadn't been there, but her friend talked about it non-stop. This was the right guild. It was definitely related to the suitor Santorini. Their hunch was right because, as they were trying to leave that place, someone inside asked the boss if their son's fever had broken yet. Inside, the red hooded cap was removed, revealing a blue-haired woman. She mentioned that her son was getting better and that a little fever was nothing. After all, how was he going to inherit this guild otherwise? After this, the Duke asked Daisy to leave. Daisy thought that dealing with lapels was a piece of cake compared to this, and she realized that the guild leader was even willing to kill anyone for money. She believed that such a woman could be the mother of the suitor. When the Duke and Daisy reached the top of the bar, they noticed that people were staring at them. A man with a beard started questioning them, asking what they were doing downstairs. The man roughly repeated his question. The Duke, without hesitating, asked him to move. The bearded man, confused and not expecting such a response, asked if he needed to repeat himself and told him to move again. The bearded man placed his hand on the table and remarked that there's always one person who doesn't follow orders, even when asked nicely. The man then said the Duke didn't look like a regular and demanded he show his face and remove the cloak. This time, he warned them to remove the cloak or he would rip off their faces. The Duke complied, revealing his face. The people at the bar were shocked to see the Duke in such a place. An old man called for silence and then addressed the Duke, saying he never expected to see someone of his stature here and assumed the Duke wasn't here to join their guild. The man guessed that the Duke was there to hire them for a job, but noted it wasn't a good time because many eyes were watching. The Duke said he had been curious about the place for a while, but, having seen it, decided it wasn't for him. The man smiled, saying it's not for those who have lived sheltered lives. He then remarked that all of Pontypool would be talking about the scandal of the Duke visiting a back alley guild with a woman he had been hiding. As he said this, he grabbed Daisy's hand. The man told the Duke that, being incredibly wealthy, he could probably buy everyone off. The Duke responded that he would, if he were there for personal reasons, but that night he was on official business. The man retorted that he didn't know much about governing, but knew it was the Duke's job to look after the people. He then asked the Duke to help him retire. The Duke replied that he didn't offer that to just anyone, and said there was only one thing he could offer a lowlife like him, to let Daisy go right now, and then he would spare his life. The man became angry, not only because the intruder wouldn't listen to him, but also because the Duke's gaze made him feel small and insignificant. He ordered his men to attack the Duke. The man was about to swing his punch at the Duke, but suddenly knights came in and started protecting the Duke. The Duke ordered them to arrest everyone, pointing out that the leader was downstairs in the basement. The Duke emerged with Daisy, and the people were all confused and staring at them. Some were frightened, realizing the assassin had been killed. People started asking the Duke questions about what had brought him there, and he was getting attention from all sides. They also began talking about Daisy, noting how the Duke was keeping her safe beside him. As the Duke and Daisy left the bar, people stared at them and talked among themselves. They got into the carriage and headed for the palace. On the way, the Duke asked Daisy if she was surprised, explaining that he needed time to discreetly bring in the knights. Daisy, trembling, was reassured by the Duke, who mentioned that this was why he insisted on going alone. Daisy said she was fine, but she never imagined the knights would be there. She meant she didn't realize the Duke was so well prepared. The Duke reiterated that he couldn't stand by when he knew it would be dangerous. He wasn't sure what would happen, but he prepared for the worst-case scenario. Daisy thought the Duke wanted to protect her from any danger he might encounter. She couldn't ignore it any longer and noticed that the Duke was giving her special treatment. The Duke then told Daisy that he wondered if it might be best to let it go but decided it would be better to clear things up. Daisy was puzzled about what he was trying to say. The Duke mentioned that he was talking about the kiss. He apologized for any confusion and mentioned that he didn't want to seem impudent, especially to her. He added that they would be spending a lot of time together and he didn't want things to get uncomfortable between them. Daisy reflected that while she had dated a bit in her life, she wasn't so experienced that she wouldn't be affected by a kiss. On the other hand, she thought the Duke must have had experience with numerous noble ladies because he was young, handsome, and had the whole package, wealth, power, etc. Daisy apologized for causing trouble and asked him to forget about everything. The Duke asked why he should forget about it, revealing that it was his first kiss. Daisy was shocked to hear this. The Duke explained that he had been busy raising a child and didn't have time for things like that. Daisy thought she wouldn't have dated either if she had been raising little Chestnut at a young age. Suddenly, she realized that this was also a scheme orchestrated by Pirta. Hattie and Pirta noticed that the Duke and Daisy were back and thought everything seemed to have gone well. Pirta was excited and wanted to meet Daisy, but Hattie stopped her, saying, "Look at them." When they looked, they saw the Duke and Daisy enjoying themselves, so Hattie decided to come up with a plan. Hattie asked Pirta to block all the people who were going outside to see her and Daisy. Since Pirta was the Duke's daughter, everyone obeyed her orders. The next day, the Duke and Daisy were having tea and discussing the previous day's incident. Daisy mentioned that the guild leader's mother worked as a healer for a free company named the Alps. Reflecting on all the names, Daisy thought her friend must have really wanted to go on vacation because all the names were of travel destinations. Daisy wondered why these people had been hiding from the Count, considering he might have helped them. The Duke suggested it wasn't really hiding. They were probably unaware they were related. However, Daisy thought the guild leader probably knew, since the child, the suitor, would become the guild leader in the future, and the guild was named Santorini. He must have heard something from his mother. The Duke said they couldn't rule out the possibility that they were hiding for another reason and asked Daisy to consider that Count Santorini was honored with his title after receiving recognition. Consequently, many people likely approached him, claiming some relation, similar to winning the lottery. The Duke didn't trust people with a criminal background, especially those associated with a guild like that. When the Duke reached for the kettle, Daisy interrupted, offering to pour him another cup. The Duke explained that it wasn't for him, he was going to pour a cup for Daisy. Daisy thought that she had seen him do this for Pirta a few times. They resumed their conversation, and Daisy mentioned that if the Count heard he had a family he didn't know about, he'd probably be really surprised. She added that the Count was very fond of children. After earning his title, the first thing he did was sponsor an orphanage. The Count, who lived his life on the battlefield like a mercenary, had a soft, grandfather-like side to him. Considering this, the Duke and Daisy devised a plan using Pirta's cuteness. In the palace, the Count came for dinner as he was invited by the Duke. Pirta was very afraid of the Count. The Count praised Pirta's hairstyle, saying he had seen similar styles during his mercenary days. Daisy was consoling Pirta and had no idea she would be afraid of the Count. She thought she had miscalculated. Daisy hoped the Count would naturally open up about his family after seeing the cute little Chestnut. The Count mentioned to the Duke that his daughter reminded him of the past when a new soldier joined the Free Company. Their head was shaved, but nobody looked better than your daughter. Pirta looked at the Count, but she was still a little bit scared. The Duke asked Pirta to sit in her own seat. The Count told her not to be afraid of him, explaining that whenever he goes to the orphanage, most of the children cry when they see him. Pirta turned around, looked at him, and asked if he was a sheep person. The Count laughed hard and said that Pirta is a funny lady, but he was not a sheep person. He added that he loved sheep so much that he carries them around on his chin, referring to his beard. After listening to this, Pirta jumped from her seat and went near the Count. Pirta asked the Count if she could pet his sheep. The Count didn't deny and held her up. Pirta liked his beard so much, she felt it was soft like a cloud. Pirta asked the Count if the sheep lived together in flocks and ate grass and leaves. The Count, wondering how she knew so much, praised her intelligence and called her a smart lady. Pirta was happy and proud. When the Count's stomach growled, Pirta thought the sheep were hungry. She looked around, saw a piece of broccoli, picked it up, and tried putting it in the Count's beard. The Duke and Daisy were worried by her actions, but all Pirta wanted to do was feed the sheep as they were hungry. The Duke apologized to the Count, and Daisy asked Pirta not to do that again. While they were making Pirta understand, the Count was looking at them and smiling. As the Count was having wine, he said that he couldn't express his gratitude because he has always been single and wasn't often invited to family meals. The Duke and Daisy looked at each other and thought this was their opportunity. The Count also mentioned that every time he sees a sweet child, he wishes he had grandchildren of his own, but he thought it was too late for that. The Duke informed him that he has a family of his own, a daughter and a grandson. The Count was confused by what the Duke was saying. The Duke then mentioned that while he was in the Alps Free Company, he met a woman. Andy Nereda, the suitor's mother, was kept in jail by the Duke's knights. From inside the jail, she shouted to be let out and constantly asked about her son. She noticed someone approaching. It was the Duke. Andy asked the Duke why he was doing this, why he had orchestrated a surprise raid by the knights, and where her son was. The Duke apologized for separating her from her son but explained that he didn't need a reason to arrest an illegal guild. Andy retorted that if his intent was to arrest them, he wouldn't have taken her son, and she insisted that he tell her the truth about his actions. The Duke informed her that she and her son would affect his daughter's future. Andy was shocked to hear this. Shortly afterward, the Count arrived with Andy's son, who ran to his mother and hugged her. The Count asked Andy if her name was Andy Nereda. Confused, Andy asked how he knew her name. The Count also asked if Celine Nereda was her mother, then removed a locket from his pocket containing Andy's mother's photograph. She was stunned to see this and demanded to know why he had a portrait of her mother. At that moment, Daisy arrived and addressed the Count as Santorini. Andy recognized the name and mentioned she had heard it once before her mother passed away. The Count fell to his knees and began crying, saying he had no idea he had a daughter. Furious, Andy told him to shut up or she would beat him because he had never been around, and now he was suddenly showing up. Andy also told the Count that she didn't know him and never wanted to. He had abandoned her mother and her, and now he was affecting her son too. Daisy interrupted, explaining that the Count was a mercenary who traveled all over the continent. He had merely left for a short while, and her mother had left while he was away. Andy dismissed this as an excuse. Daisy asked if her mother had ever said anything bad about her father when she mentioned the name Santorini. Andy responded that it was too late now, as her mother had struggled her whole life before passing away, and now it didn't matter. Daisy informed her that if things continued like this, she might never see her son grow up. Andy was confused about what was happening. Daisy, being the author of the story, knew that according to the initial plot, the guild leader grows up an orphan if the story cannot be changed. However, it was difficult for her to explain this to Andy. Daisy asked Andy if she wanted her son to grow up all alone without any parents, as she did. Daisy continued, saying that Andy's mother always wanted her to be happy right up until her last breath. The Count was still crying and begging for forgiveness, admitting that it was his fault. Andy's heart melted, and she also apologized to her father. Seeing all this, Daisy became emotional too and started crying. The Duke consoled her and tried to wipe her tears. After that, she hugged the Duke and cried a little longer. The next day, the Duke and Daisy were sitting and having tea when he handed a few papers to Daisy. It was an application for the knight training school. The Duke thought it would convince the guild leader too. Daisy correctly assumed it was for Andy's son. She wondered if it was a good idea to send the future suitor to night school. The Duke informed her that it would take some time for them to reconcile, but he also knew that the mother and son were staying at the Count's estate without any issues. He believed the Count wanted to register both of them as his family and send his grandchild to the academy right away. However, the Duke worried that it would be hard for the child to fit in there because it was already filled with noble children. That's why he prepared for the knight training school, which was different. It was a boarding school where young men learned to follow and obey the rules. It was known for its strict discipline and sword training. The school also fostered a strong sense of solidarity among its trainees, and the bond between seniors and juniors was strong. After reading it, Daisy thought it would be the best route for the boy, and if all went to plan, he would never have to cross paths with little Chestnut. Daisy was worried if Andy would return to the guild, but the Duke informed her that the Count wouldn't let that happen. He wanted his daughter to get on the right path since he had already missed so much of her life. Even the Duke wouldn't let that happen because once the mother and son became part of the Count's family, it would be easier for him to track how they were doing. Daisy mistakenly called the Duke by his first name, and he insisted she call him Dane. The Duke informed her that they should be on a first-name basis since they would be working closely together. Daisy was puzzled because society revolved around class. As he was a duke, just below the emperor, and she was just a commoner, how could she address him by his first name? Nevertheless, she decided to accept it. The Duke put his finger on Daisy's cheek and thanked her for everything she had done and would do in the future. Daisy also thanked him. She liked when the Duke trusted her. As he was leaving, he remembered something, turned around, and gave a pouch to Daisy. He informed her that he was supposed to give it to her yesterday, but things got really busy. When she opened it, she was shocked. The Duke gave Daisy her first income as she completed 30 days at the mansion. She noticed that it was gold coins, not silver. She consulted with the Duke, and he informed her that he had initially promised to give her 10 times the usual amount. Daisy realized he was serious about this promise. Sometime later, the Duke was sitting in his room with his hand on his head, wondering why he kept watching Daisy's lips so closely. He was confused and going mad because this had never happened to him before. He hadn't realized how beautiful she looked with a smile on her face, reminding him of a spring flower in full bloom. The Duke was shocked and his cheeks turned red as he noticed that he called her beautiful in his thoughts. Hattie came into his room, and the Duke asked him if his current workload was heavier than usual. Hattie responded that nowadays, the Duke was working a lot less than usual, and was busy with other matters. When the Duke asked about his daughter, Hattie informed him that she was drawing and wanted to gift it to Daisy to celebrate her 30 days at the mansion. Daisy asked Pirta to spend a day with her in the city, but Pirta turned her down, saying she was busy. Daisy was happy because she thought it was nice to have a day to herself once in a while, and since she got paid today, it called for a little shopping. So, Daisy went to the market and visited the store. The store woman welcomed Daisy, and Daisy informed her that she was there to buy gifts for a child and a young gentleman. The store woman said they had something perfect for that, which the little lady would love. She then showed Daisy a brilliantly handcrafted hairband with a pumpkin on top, and the part that touches the ear was lined with soft cotton for comfort. Daisy was happy with the recommendation and decided to take it. The store woman also asked Daisy if she wanted to see other items they had in stock. Daisy looked at all of them and chose a gift for Hattie as well. Now it was time for her to purchase a gift for the Duke. The store woman mentioned that men like him were the most difficult to shop for, but then she showed Daisy a pen that was directly imported from the continent of Dulcer. It was rare to find an azure stone with such clarity, and this particular pen had an especially elegant finish compared to the rest. Seeing the pen, Daisy remembered the color of the Duke's eyes, as it matched the stone color. It was a bit pricey, but it was worth every penny, so Daisy decided to take that as well. After she left the store, it was finally time to hit a restaurant. Daisy entered the restaurant, and there was a woman standing there who knew Daisy from before she worked for the Duke. Daisy and the woman greeted each other and exchanged words about how long it had been since they last saw each other. The lady was proud that Daisy was working with the Duke nowadays. After that, the lady asked Daisy if she knew about the woman the Duke had fallen in love with. Daisy was shocked to hear this. As the woman asked Daisy about the Duke's love rumor, Daisy was shocked to hear this. The lady then informed Daisy about the recent arrest of a member of an illegal guild. Daisy was stunned, as she was directly involved in that incident. The woman explained that apparently, the Duke only carried out the arrest to rescue the woman he loved because the guild had kidnapped her. Daisy was in shock, as this was new information for her. The woman also mentioned that she didn't know who the woman with the Duke was, but she had heard that she was quite beautiful. The people who were at the scene had said so. Daisy knew that gossip could get out of hand, but this was ridiculous to her because she was the only one with the Duke that day. When the woman asked Daisy if she was unaware of this, Daisy gently declined. Suddenly, a couple sitting at another table intervened in the conversation, informing them that the latest word they heard from their neighbor's cousin's boyfriend was that the woman who managed to capture the Duke's attention was actually a princess from a distant land. While Daisy listened to all these rumors, she wondered what was happening and what kind of nonsense people were spreading. She stood up and said she had to leave because she couldn't bear to listen to any of it anymore. Back at the mansion, Hattie brought in a few letters that the Duke needed to review. He noticed that Pirta was sitting inside and drawing something. Pirta wanted to go to the city with Daisy, but she had to draw this gift for her. Hattie told Pirta that she should have taken the time to draw it beforehand so that she could have gone out to the city with Daisy. Pirta continued making her drawing and asked Hattie to get back to what he was doing. After some time, Pirta finished her drawing and showed it to her dad. She sat on her dad's lap and started showing all the drawings she had made. The first one was of herself holding a pumpkin. The second was of a sheep eating some broccoli. The next drawing was of the Duke and Daisy holding hands together. The Duke praised Pirta's drawing skills and told her that he could see she had put a lot of work into each page. Pirta was worried and asked her dad if Daisy would like all of it. Suddenly, Pirta heard that Daisy had come back and rushed towards her, hugging her. While the Duke was looking at the drawing his daughter made as a present for Daisy, he thought of something and told Daisy that tomorrow they would be going to an island. The next day, Daisy was busy packing for the trip to the island, but she seemed a bit confused. Pirta entered the room and asked what she was doing. Daisy informed her that she was packing but was having difficulty because no space was left, yet she had so much to pack. Pirta noticed that there were many of her things that Daisy was packing. Daisy explained that she would rather take it all with them just in case, rather than end up needing something they didn't have. Daisy wanted to be fully prepared since it was their first trip. Suddenly, Pirta made a face and said that she would stay at home. Daisy was shocked to hear this. Pirta told Daisy that she should go with her dad. Daisy informed her that if she didn't go on the trip, Daisy also wouldn't be able to go because it would not be proper for two adults like her and the Duke to go on a trip alone. After listening to this, Pirta started thinking. Daisy told her that she really wanted to go to this island, and Pirta quickly changed her mind and said that she would go too. They hugged each other, both excited for the trip. Daisy looked at the presents she had bought for people and thought that packing those was the only thing left to do. After a while, they were on a ship in the middle of the ocean, and Pirta was enjoying the view. Daisy asked her to be careful as it was dangerous to hang over the edge of the ship like that. They had a conversation about seagulls and what kind of food they eat. Everybody was having a blast, but Hattie was not feeling well because of motion sickness and was vomiting. The Duke told him this was why he had insisted Hattie not come and stay at the mansion. But still, Hattie came. Pirta consoled Hattie, telling him he would be fine on the trip. Daisy marveled at how well these two got along. The navigator informed the Duke that they were almost at their destination. The Duke said he could see the dock from there and asked to prepare for disembarking. As they landed from the ship, people welcomed the Duke. Daisy asked the Duke if he had employees residing on this island as well. The Duke confirmed, saying that way he could visit anytime. Daisy marveled at the Duke's incredible wealth and wondered what else he could afford. Suddenly, a man reached out to Daisy, noting that the gap between the dock and the ship was fairly wide, and offered her his hand. The Duke watched this interaction. When the navigator reached out to Daisy and offered her a hand to cross the dock, the Duke interrupted, gave his hand instead, and asked the navigator to disembark. Daisy smiled warmly, took the Duke's hand, and stepped onto the island. As she entered, she was amazed, wondering if the annex was this big, how big the main building would be. The workers on the island offered them glasses of juice, and the woman who served the juice was wearing traditional island attire. Daisy and the Duke were sitting on chairs when Pirta came and started pulling Daisy's hand, asking her to come and play in the ocean. Daisy told Pirta that she would get changed and then join her. She was still marveling at how gorgeous the place was. Pirta started playing in the water, and Daisy began laughing because Pirta looked less like a child and more like a cherry tomato. Someone had forgotten to eat on the beach. Pirta called for her dad as well. But when Daisy looked at the Duke, she noticed he seemed a little different today. She told Pirta that she thought her dad needed to rest. But as she turned back towards Pirta, Pirta threw a starfish at Daisy's face and started laughing. The Duke approached Daisy and told Pirta not to tease her as it was making Daisy uncomfortable. Seeing this, Hattie Hyder formulated a plan and whispered something in Pirta's ear. Then Hattie grabbed a bucket full of water and looked towards the Duke. The Duke understood that Hattie was about to throw the water on him and warned him. But Hattie didn't listen and splashed the water on the Duke. The Duke was soaked. He went back and removed his t-shirt. And this was the first time Daisy saw him shirtless. She was surprised that she hadn't noticed it before, but the Duke had a great body. The Duke came close to Daisy and asked for a towel. Hattie and Pirta looked at each other and smiled, knowing their mission was successful. Daisy offered a towel to the Duke, who called Hattie over while he was enjoying his time with Pirta. He informed Hattie that his salary would be docked for a month. Hattie was in extreme shock and started crying. Pirta thought something good had happened to Hattie, which is why he was crying happily. Daisy turned around, looked at the Duke, and noticed that he had a blush on his face. Later, when they were all having food, Daisy and Pirta were completely full. They noticed a beautiful sunset over the ocean. Daisy thought it had been so long since she had enjoyed a sunset like this. It was truly beautiful. She remembered the gifts she had brought for all of them and wondered when she should give them out. She decided to do it now and started distributing the gifts. Daisy began with Pirta and gave her the headband she had brought. Pirta was really excited, thinking that even though her birthday had passed, she was still receiving gifts. She was very happy. Daisy informed her that it wasn't anything too special, but she wanted to commemorate her first paycheck. Daisy also had a gift for Hattie. They both started opening their gifts. When Pirta saw the hairband with a pumpkin on it, she was really happy and liked it very much. She thanked Daisy for it, and Hattie was also happy with the gift he received. Daisy glanced at the Duke and wondered if it would be appropriate to give him his gift now. She hesitated, worried about giving him the wrong impression. Suddenly, Pirta looked at Hattie and said, "The sun has set." This was a code sentence they had planned earlier. After this, they both started walking away from Daisy and the Duke, announcing that they were going for a walk and that Daisy and her dad couldn't join them. Now, Daisy and the Duke were sitting alone. It felt really weird and awkward for Daisy to give the Duke his gift now. She regretted not giving it to him while Pirta and Hattie were still there. The silence between them was overwhelming. Daisy noticed it was getting quite dark and wondered if she would be able to give him the gift today. Suddenly, the Duke called out to Daisy and grabbed her hand. Daisy asked the Duke what had happened all of a sudden and wondered why he was holding her hand. The Duke and Daisy saw the fireflies, which were the most famous attraction. Daisy was really amazed to see all of this because she had never seen fireflies in real life before. Daisy was having a good time, and the Duke was really happy that he could do something that Daisy would like. Daisy was feeling content. Today was a wonderful day for her. It was almost like a gift, and she didn't want to forget the moment or this feeling ever. She thanked the Duke for this day and handed him the gift she had brought for him. Daisy informed the Duke that it was just a small gift, and he might already have one, and she was sure that he might not actually need it. The Duke mentioned that he thought there would be no gift for him, but when he opened it, he found a fountain pen. Daisy explained that she thought this pen might suit him because the color matched his eyes. The Duke was silent for a while, and Daisy thought that he didn't like it. But after a while, the Duke pressed the gift and told Daisy that he would cherish it forever and he liked it. Daisy was glad to hear this and was really happy. They both gave each other a stare, and suddenly Daisy looked away because she was shy. They both started watching the fireflies again, and they were enjoying it. It was so quiet there that Daisy could hear the Duke's breathing. Suddenly, Daisy's lips twitched. She found that there was some insect on her face. She started worrying, and suddenly both of them noticed that there were a lot of insects. After a while, they both decided that they should head back inside their hotel. The next morning, when Daisy completed all the packing as they were about to leave, Pirta and Hattie came back, but both of their faces were filled with mosquito bites. Daisy was worried about them and started looking for ointment. They returned to the Duke's mansion from the trip, or we could say, the dreamlike trip. Pirta was standing in front of a door and asked Daisy to quickly come in, as a different gift Daisy was not expecting was waiting for her. Let's see what gift Pietra had made for Daisy and what kind of new tricks will Pietra use on Daisy. Pietra and Hattie's team up was superb and fantastic. They both tried their best to make Daisy and Duke fall in love with each other. See you in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.